Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Cricket on Forever Sports for today's T20 Challenge wrap up. The Lions being crowned T20 champions. No surprises there. Really, just too strong and an incredibly stacked side. With somebody like Lucius Apamla, Proteas T20 player, wasn't even playing in the final. As was the quality on display in the Lions camp. But yeah, I think it was an interesting tournament, and it was really good to have the
Yeah.
very good performances by the likes of KJ Obada, Lungi Ngidi. The top three batsmen were all Proteas players, so it definitely made a difference. There's no doubt about that. But I think, before we look at the awards, we think about some of the best players and stuff like that. I think we need to talk about where it went wrong for the Titans and your side, and why a team which I think only had like two or three players in the squad who hadn't had a Protea call up in their lifetime just didn't come off. Let's talk us through the Titans. What went wrong?
The batting. And anyone can point that out to you, but if we take a deep dive into it, Clausen, the captain. At times, you would think he would take a hold of the game and lead the side to the end, but the way he lost his wickets and the slow rate of batting and the running between the wickets just wasn't good. Even the likes of Markram opening the batting. I mean, yeah, for a player that we know as being a very good limited overs player, he didn't show that. He very underwhelmed this tournament. Getting Henry David in, wasn't needed. I'm sure we could have got a young batsman in to just shake up the team. But yeah, just overall, just looking at our batting, which is very disappointing because our bowling, even though we had a couple of guys doing some games that didn't do well, um, in one or two overs, I think overall bowling was very good.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Gidi had a very good tournament, and he was quite well backed up by Lazard Williams. Chris Morris probably a little bit disappointing. After being the most expensive T20 player ever in the IPL, had a pretty poor tournament. I mean, he took just 5 wickets. I mean, his economy wasn't bad. He was under six, so he wasn't very
Yeah.
expensive, but didn't really add much with the bat either. So yeah, a weird tournament, but I think also a tournament where home advantage was everything. And we said so in the preview. In fact, you alluded to it a lot about the fact that we can't rule the Dolphins out playing at home, playing in Durban where they know the
Yeah.
conditions, and that's exactly what happened. They finished top of the log, got straight to the final, and came up about 20 runs too short. I think a
Yeah.
bit of a weird final. It wasn't a great match really. It got close towards the end, but I think it was guilty of playing 10 days of cricket on the same ground, using the
Yeah.
same pitches. How it all just sort of disintegrated. It wasn't a case of a really nice flat wicket where we were going to try and score 180, 190 and try and chase that down for the final. It was a low scoring game, which just doesn't make really good for watching. I mean, I was watching the Pakistan Super League and watching a side chase down 185, 190, and
Yeah.
Alex Hales, scoring a 50 off 30 balls. That's what you want to see in T20 cricket. That's what T20 is all about. We don't want to see in a final the Lions chasing down 105 and just being very methodological about it and just knocking it out, taking six and over, cool, a couple of shots,
Yeah.
and they're there. So do you think there's a bit of a worry in terms of the standard of T20 cricket we're seeing in relation to the fact that we've got the World Cup at the end of the year?
Not really. I think all these players kind of needed this wake up call that when we go to India, we can't really expect these hard, bouncy wickets. There will be at times where our bowlers need to be good with their change ups, with the way they're batting and the speed that they're batting. So it's a good learning curve. But for the World Cup in Australia, it's probably not the best preparation, to be honest. But looking at now, I think a lot of the players put up their hands and tested their skills more than anything.
Yeah, I think it's just look. I mean, I think the standard wasn't terrible. I think it was probably worse than we've seen in the Zanzibar Super League. We've seen some really good games in the MSL in the last sort of 2 seasons. And obviously it's a completely different thing. It's franchise based, provincial based.
Yeah,
But it was also the last sort of domestic limited overs cricket we're going to see until the end of the year. So we'll get on there in a second in terms of our best players and stuff like that. But do you think Mark Boucher watched this tournament and went, I need to relook at my T20 plans, or do you think he sat there? He's probably already got about a 20, 25 man squad, which he thinks is going to be on the plane at the end of the year. Do you think he looked at this at the tournament and kind of went, "Yeah, what we've got is about right"? There was no one there that was like really banging down the door to include selection.
Yeah, that's the only sad part. I think we might see some surprising names not getting brought up into the conversations in terms of like a high performance, training call-up. But I think relatively, he and the rest of the country knows there are 25 players that clearly deserve their tickets for the World Cup. It will just be interesting to see who, if these names do get brought up and if we will get any surprises. But I don't think much changed, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you probably find that you've always got that sort of 15, 16 players that will be on the plane, and then you can go and sit there saying, well, if we're going to India, and then maybe we take these extra spinners, or we take a left arm seamer, or we take this type of batsman, somebody who can play spin a bit better, and then if we're going to Australia, well, with those extra couple of spots you've got to play with, maybe taking someone who really thrives off seam, or that kind of thing. So I think probably those become a little bit more of the intricacies when it comes to those fringe selections that. Because I'm always a fan of that. If you're going to take your top 13 best players, and then when you've got a little bit of doubt, don't necessarily take the next best player. Try and take something that's different. We don't want the 15th best player just playing because he's a seamer and he's not in the top 4. We want the 15th maybe best player playing because maybe he's a right arm leggy or left arm unorthodox that offers you something a little bit different. Sometimes you can. Just not necessarily take the best player because you've got too much of the same thing and try and add some variety. But I say I think it was the most disappointing thing that there were a lot of youngsters that we were hoping to really stand up. I mean, I think of somebody like Ryan Rickerton was very disappointing. I think Grant Willison, I was really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Thought he was pretty poor. Chile also wasn't great, and I think we were hoping to see a bit more from some of these sort of not necessarily fringe players, but players who are sort of the next generation to try and stamp their authority against established international players, and they just didn't really.
I think that's just the sad part of it. But I think in general, it's good that they got the exposure that they did playing with these Proteas and against these Proteas. I'm looking at someone like Joe Coetzee. Wow, when he came in, his first game, he performed so well, and I'm looking at him and I'm saying, wow, he's the future. He's obviously worried about back injuries and hamstrings and all that, but it's good exposure for all these players, all of them.
Yeah, I think maybe the frustration is that we kind of saw some very good, very young players. And then we saw some reasonable performances from sort of the mid-20s and a couple of, somebody like a Nave, he's 31 years old, coming to the end of his career, that's experience. But I would have liked to have seen more from that sort of 23 to 26-year-old bracket where you should be coming towards your prime, where you should be pushing for Protea selection. As you say, Reino Fatunda was very impressive. Gerald Coetzee when he played, and I think probably would have liked to see more of him, but injuries do seem to be a bit of a problem with him. But Tristan Stubbs suddenly looked very impressive. Marco Jansen had some moments. So I think we're looking at players who it's too early. We're looking at. It gets so complicated. Having a T20 World Cup this year, and then next year, and then a World Cup in 2023. There's not much room for debuts and for, I suppose, after next year. Even by next year, you can't really afford to try and use the 1 days to bring in players because you're prepping for the 2023. You can't really bring the T20, use T20 matches to bring up players and give them debuts because you've got a World Cup to prepare for. So in preparation-wise, it's kind of throwing everything out because we historically have always thought we're going to focus on 1 day and we'll use T20 to bring in to blood the youngsters, play the fringe players, which is why we've got such a poor T20 record. And I genuinely think is the reason why we've done so poorly in T20 World Cups because it's a format we just don't take seriously.
Yes, that's very true. I think our domestic system reflects that as well. And it's a problem because we probably need to see more T20 cricket in the country. But I'm hoping with the new domestic structure that's coming in, that will hopefully change. Our problem is the tier basis of it is it might spoil it, and it could kill the idea. But I think some of these players, we talked about players getting snubbed from the squad, Jonathan Bird, Tundle, those guys. So I'm hoping that the new system might just get something out, something that we need.
Yeah, I think we need to pay the format more respect. I think that it is a very short format. It's a very explosive format. It's a very much a one man can save the day type format, but it's still a team game. And I think that's the biggest problem is that there's no doubt that if you put the top 11 T20, I mean, you go to the IPL. And Anil Nokia was phenomenal last year. KJ Obada was phenomenal. Faf du Plessis was among the top run scorers. If you bring back A. de Villiers, among the top run scorers. Quinton de Kock, one of the most devastating batsmen in the world. You've got it in one to here. Shamsi currently the number 2 T20 world bowler in the world. In theory, your 11 for South Africa should be a really good T20 side, but we don't play as a team. We kind of sort of say, I mean, like, how often do we say, Faf, take a rest for the T20 series? You take a rest. You take a rest. You take a rest. Whereas we sometimes don't say, right, this is our best side, and they're going to work together as a team so that by the time we get to the World Cup across the format, they're playing as a team. I think that's where we got it right in the 2015 World Cup, which you kind of go back and think we should have won that World Cup. Regardless of what happened off the field, the team was so well balanced. Everybody knew their role. Everybody had their role. You had the Amlers, you had Miller as a finisher, you had the sort of partnerships of, Morkel and Steyn. You had Tahir Bowling well. We had a formula that was working. And I think we don't see enough of our T20 side playing together to be able to generate that form, to be able to build that team chemistry.
I'm just quite worried that I think a lot of the politics might come into play when it comes to the selection, because we haven't seen de Villiers, but we know he wants to play.
Yeah.
Abbott's is back in the country. Harmer's back in the country. Tahir hasn't played international cricket in, 2 years now?
Yeah, despite saying he's available,
So, Morris, coming out in the media saying that he hasn't spoken to anyone at CSA for the past year. So, we're looking at all these stories and we think, geez, politics is going to really come into play with this.
And it's a whole different type of politics, We used to the transformation, and now we're just talking about simple man management that seems to be a bit lacking.
And despite us, we might take the 25 best cricketers in the country that are available and ready to play for us, but they have no playing time together whatsoever, and that is going to be the disaster piece of our World Cup.
Yeah, and I think in the Pakistan series, and I think that one of the positives can be the fact that a team that hadn't played together a lot managed to perform so well. But again, it did feel like it was always a certain sort of individual pulling us through, which can often be the case in T20 cricket. But when you look at teams like the IPL, often that's why like captaincy always becomes so important, because you can see teams where they can get the best out of every individual, more often than not, and it's not necessarily just two players. I mean, something like Royal Challengers. I genuinely think the reason Royal Challengers Bangalore don't do better is because they continuously rely on de Villiers, on Virat Kohli all the time, and everybody else is allowed to sort of struggle in the shadows because you've got the brilliance of those two, as opposed to other sides. You take like a Mumbai or Delhi Capitals, where because they can get more out of more of their players. When their best players don't perform, they've still got other people who can step up and take their place, and that's what we saw in the 2015 World Cup. If de Kock, Amla, and de Villiers failed, often Faf and Dave Miller would come off. You've got to have the quality and be able to. No, you don't have to. Not everybody has to play a brilliant innings every time. As long as when you're out of form, somebody else is in form. There always has to be able to have that sort of flexibility. But I don't want to get too carried away with this sort of that. We've got the entire year to talk about how we're probably going to flop in the T20 World Cup for lots of obvious reasons. What I think we just move on to is some of the awards. And let's start with the biggest disappointment. And I think one player, I think we came down to two players. One who is touted as the future SA captain, and one who has not played for South Africa, but had a brilliant one-day cup and had a call-up. So we went between Ryan Rickleton and Aiden Markram as the biggest disappointment. And I think we're probably a bit of a split decision. I kind of feel that Rickleton is the biggest disappointment. We probably expect more from Markram than you do for Rickleton, but I think having got the call-up, having played so well in the one-day cup, and we've seen some of the knocks he's played, to average 7 runs and score 49 across 7 innings, he didn't come off once across the entire tournament. and it did raise a couple of question marks. Why was he allowed to continue playing so badly? 49 runs across 7. I mean, it's just not good enough. And a strike rate of 67, he just didn't look at it at all. So he was my biggest disappointment. Maybe I'm a Lions fan, so I'm slightly biased. But and you for Markram?
Yo, look, we know Markram as being the limited overs player of the country. Future Proteas captain. We think he's going to lead us in all three formats, opening the batting. But for someone that's especially, very good domestic, he did not show us any quality whatsoever. He got the ball a couple of the times, bought a couple of good overs, but that's not what we have him for. We have him there for destructive bats at the top of the order. I don't know if it's the wickets that he played on. Maybe he's not too comfortable. He's only comfortable on the hard wickets, the high faults, like Australia and that. But that was so disappointing from him. From a player that we know has so much quality, he gave us nothing.
Yeah, I mean, five matches, 5 innings, 57 runs, an average of 11, a strike rate of 93 does not make for particularly good reading. So I think given the expectation and the fact that he's also was in such good form internationally, I think we'll probably give it to Markram as the biggest disappointment. I don't think it's not his best format. We know it's not his best format, but he always comes back and makes domestic cricket look stupidly easy.
Yeah.
That's why he continuously gets called up to the national side, because you'll drop him and then you'll have that like one day cup 150 where he just straight drove the entire over the. It was unbelievable that innings he scored. So yeah, I think given the quality we know he has, and it's always that sort of why isn't it coming off? We know that he's got the talent, it's just not coming off. On a brighter note, standout performances, bowling and batting. Bowling, I think, is very easy. We came across two, which was Mahima's hat-trick, obviously, in the first, I think it was the second day, actually. Was very, very cool. And then you can't look past Sisanda Magala's fifer. And what a play he is. We'll talk about him in great length. But, also nice to see a different spinner doing quite well and getting the hat-trick. Didn't necessarily go on to have the best tournament overall, but it was a very nice moment for him.
Well, I think it's good that he got his name out there. I think that's so important for all these types of players. Maybe one day he might surprise us with a call-up maybe to like an India or Pakistan series or Bangladesh series. But, it's good that we are starting to see that we have potential in the spin department. I think that's what South Africa really needs right now.
Yeah, I think Sean van Berg was also pretty decent. But Mahima finished the tournament with in 3 matches he took 7 wickets, an average of 11, and an economy of 7.54. As you say, it's amazing how one performance can put you on the map. You think of something like Nono Pongolo, who was floating around the system, wasn't even a star, wasn't really doing anything. He was picked up by Joey Stars, had an opportunity, and suddenly had like these 2 weeks where he was like brilliant. And suddenly people are saying, "Oh well, is he going to get a call-up?" Which showed that a lot of people hadn't watched enough to understand that wasn't a consistent him. But as you say, putting your name on the map like that just helps, because suddenly, especially in an environment where people don't watch week in week out and aren't always aware of exactly what's happening, a couple of stand-up performances here and there, and suddenly there'll be calls like, "Oh, but wasn't he the guy who took the hat trick?" And puts it on the radar. But Sisanda Magala's 5 for 20. you can't go further than that, I suppose. So, and then deserves a call up. For us, I think it's got to be how do you watch this tournament? And I understand the fitness issues, but surely as Mark Boucher, you're watching this thinking, when Pakistan arrive next month, was it this month? I think it's next month.
Next month, I think.
Magala has to be getting a debut. He has to be in the side. You can't leave him out.
It will be so shocking, and I think the whole country will come out and up because he's probably been the best domestic bowler in the past 2 years in the country. So we've been screaming and shouting for him. He's probably our best finisher domestically. He's raised so many eyebrows. So it's really his time to get his call up.
Especially in T20 cricket, you just see he's a T20 bowler. He's got some pace. He can be. He hits his lines. He hits his length. He can be very, very good. And I do think he needs to probably get a little bit fitter. I think he is a little bit than he was last year, and has made a bit of progress. Needs to keep working on it. But at the end of the day, if he can do the job, it's T20 cricket. He has to bowl 4 overs.
Yeah.
And he can hit a long ball if he needs to. If Raheem Cornwall can do a job for the West Indies, take fifers, and get it done,
Yeah.
why doesn't Magala at least deserve the chance? I mean, you go back and you think of Rory Kleinfeld, even when Robbie Frydick was playing, big players, not necessarily the fittest, Jacques Cullis, Graham Smith was
Richard
exactly,
Easy.
exactly. We've had really big players. If they can do the job, they can do the job. I'm all for having fitness standards, but let's not sort of be sticking the sort of, it's such a professional sport. You have to look like this, be like this. Everybody has to be a Dave Miller athlete. Sometimes somebody's skill is good enough.
And I think it's we have to be very careful, player management as well in that regard, because you don't want to change a player too much where it will eventually affect his performance. I'm not going to say, look, Magala, he lost a bit of the weight and he got fitter and he's been bowling better. Really change too much of him because you don't know how it's going to affect him. But even in saying that, in T20 cricket, you have kind of the allowance where the not so fit guys can get into the team and perform very well. It's all about choosing your best 11, and you can't tell me now he's not one of our best bowlers.
Well, that's the thing, and I think that it's interesting. I mean, you look at Lungi and Gidi, and he's bowling very nicely, but has lost a lot of pace, and it looks like a whole different sort of frame, different type of bowler, and it's still going to work for him. But you sort of wonder, I'm sure most of it's the injury, but is there a certain degree of the fact that he is in a bit of a different physique has, maybe has that contributed to him losing that little bit of pace? I'm a big Ngidi fan, and I think we saw some of the best of him this tournament. But I mean, I remember watching him for the first time, and it was a one-day cup match, and he was opening the bowling, and I think he was 20 or 21 years old, and put it down, and the speedo came up at 145, and I went, oh hello, there we go, that's a Proteas bowler. You could just see it. He had the technique, he had the action, he had the pace. It's just we sat there going, well, here's our next Rabada, and now he's bowling in the 130s, can't really get up to 140. So. I said, it is always sometimes difficult to try and change someone too much. Best Protea?
Yeah, Lungi.
Yeah,
he was the shining light of the Titans' demise.
Yeah, and it was a very dark Titans start to light up.
His stats were just, yeah.
Well, yeah,
I'm glad to see him bowl at his best, especially on these types of pitches where we know he's very good with his change-ups and his line and length. Yeah. It's good that he maintained that because we probably need that now, especially in.
I think Ngidi's been frustrated because right now he should be established as one of the best bowlers in the world. He burst onto the season when he had that brilliant Test match debut against India, and he's been very good. He's had some very good performances in the IPL, for Chennai. And you look at he bowled in 5 matches he bowled 17 overs. An economy of 5.76, below 6 is fantastic. An average of 9.8, best for 3 for 18, taking 10 wickets and a strike rate of 10. You can't ask for more. And I think that, even Abadi I thought was brilliant. Didn't quite have the sort of same stat. It was literally only Magala who actually outbowled him, but didn't have the same economy. I mean, he was terrific. I think an honourable mention as well. We didn't actually talk much about it, but. Talking about spinners, Keshav Maharaj was very good. I mean, he bowled in an economy of less than 5 the entire tournament, bowling 24 overs. So, deserves a lot of praise there. 8 wickets there. So maybe also somebody who maybe should be on the sort of T20 radar. I also think in the batting department, the top 4, 5 run scorers were all Proteas players. Reza Hendricks, Temba Bavuma, Van der Dussen, Dave Miller, Pat van Biljon. Particularly happy to see Pat van Biljon.
All great batsmen.
Yeah. But it's good to see Pat van Biljon after having a decent series in Pakistan where he kind of showed that he might have international temperament and caliber within him to come back and actually score some runs as well. But very tough to see. My biggest problem is Reza Hendricks just continues to frustrate me because we see him batting so well and then he can often do that and he gets a start. I mean, his average of 36 is kind of like, it's a brilliant average to have in a T20, but it kind of sums it up where he always gets going and then loses his wicket. But before we get to best batsman, best bowler, best player, best all-rounder, and we decided on. I thought Vian Lubbert had a decent tournament. But we went with George Linde, who scored 119 runs across 5 matches and 5 innings, a high score of 48 not out, an average of 29, and a strike rate of 167. I mean, he's an incredibly talented player. And to add on to that, his bowling stats were 5 matches, 8 wickets, an economy of 6.95, and a strike rate of 15. Yeah, I mean, we saw against England how I think we know he's going to be in the T20 squad, and he probably will be. Especially when we go to India, you're going to look at him and Shams a bit. Having that batting as well. I mean, how much do you think that Mark Boucher's sitting there going, "This is what I really need in the squad"?
Yeah, I think he really needed an all rounder like that. But to his credit, luckily he's a spinner, because we've had a lot of good pace all rounders perform very well in this tournament. And the fact that Linda bowled well on pitches that, yes, accommodate, but that was needed for him.
Yeah, so I think it was good to see that, as you say, especially a spinning all rounder is because I think we've never really had spinners who can. I mean, the last 5-6 years we don't really have spinners that can bat. We had Robin Peterson was probably the closest thing we had. Tahir doesn't know which side of the bat to hold, and Shamsi doesn't know what batting is. So but both brilliant bowlers. So nice to be able to not necessarily compromise on the batting, which makes a huge difference. When you've got 2 all-rounders, it makes a huge difference. Best batsman, I think we probably can't look beyond Reza Hendricks, although I think honorable mention, Reza Hendricks just top scorer in the tournament, 257 runs, an average of 36. Temba Bavuma scored 216 runs, an average of 43 because he had 2 not outs. And then Rassie van der Dussen, 167 runs, an average of 41. Probably the reason the Lions won, in that those two are just so good at chasing and being able to be calm in the situation and manage the situation. But you can't look past Reza Hendricks. 257 runs, a strike rate of 118, just 8 sixes, 21 fours. He just looked in brilliant nick.
It's good for him. He can take his time when he bats, especially at the top of the inning. But he showed good acceleration in his innings, and that's what we need. You can start slow, but if you accelerate, then you can build a really good inning. So he really showed us that.
Yeah, so congrats, Risa. We're going on a great tournament, and I think we'll do this in the same time. Best batsman, best player, deserves a call-up, standout bowling performance. You cannot look beyond Sisanda Magala. 6 matches, 13 wickets, 3 more than any other bowler. A bit expensive at times, but a strike rate of 10, an average of 12.84, and the best stats of 5 wickets. I thought was very good in the final as well. 30 years old, he's getting on in years, but he's got the experience, and he just looks international quality at the moment.
Yeah, it's good to see that he's doing this well.
Yeah, and I think that wraps up. So, I mean, if you look at them all, most of them all Proteas players, which I suppose is a good thing in that at least we know that we've got our best players playing for us. Bit of a reassurance in terms of the selectors cap, but it's just I think we need to probably maybe the only worry is the fact that we probably wanted to see more from the youngsters and more players put their hand up, but. I think people like Tristan Stubbs having nice innings there. Marco Jansen was announcing himself. Rana Fontana announcing himself as more than just across all formats. An interesting tournament. And
it's a tournament that I wish we had more overseas players, or just overseas players.
It did just sort of feel like a watered down MSL, a really really watered down MSL.
Yeah. But besides that, I think a lot of players put their names in the book, the project. Not necessarily for selection now, but something in the future. It's good to see that there's potential, but I think we need to be playing more cricket.
Yeah, 100% agree. So let us know what you think of the performances down in the comments below. Smash like on the video. Please do subscribe. fortunately looked domestic cricket for a while, but we'll be bringing you some of the world cricket and having a conversation about everything South African cricket as well. Maybe even looking at the international cricket. We can maybe review England and India in less time than it took to actually play the match itself. So make sure you keep it all locked on Fair Sports. My name is Steven. I'm with my boy Beeks, and we'll be back very, very soon. Thank you.